So today we are finishing up Access Project 3. Just a few things to refine there, and then we'll get into our last Access project. On Monday, going to just be helping you review for the final, giving you some things that are on the final. And just to give you a heads up, the final is 4 projects. 2 short Word and PowerPoint projects, like a page and one thing to do, like a parenthetical reference or something in Word. In PowerPoint, 1 page or one short hymn, put it up on slides, just like we see our AV people doing, and maybe a little animation. The main tasks will be an Excel spreadsheet with tasks to complete and a Access database to build just a couple tables and connect them. So 4 little projects, mainly an Excel and an Access project, in an hour and a half. So as we practice this, and we'll do some more practice on Monday, not exactly, but very close to what's going to be on the final. So giving you a lot of practice, not learning a lot of new stuff, just practicing what we've already covered. So let's get going on the last Access project and get that finished up. And let's find out where we're at. We go start Access and go to my previous project. Access Project 3, Section 1. And here's what we have. We have lots of tables. We have some queries. There is our mass changes query sitting there with the exclamation point on it. And let's see how far we got. We got quite a ways. We can adjust any queries. Let's see, did we have any queries? Or no, we had datasheet view of our vendors? Yeah, we adjusted the colors and the font on our veterinary vendors table. And we can include, remember how we can include the totals? Opening any datasheet, we can turn on or off seeing that totals row. That was one of the last things we did. And lots of things you can play around with. The colors there in the grid lines, we saw how we can change that. Turn on and off grid lines. As we view our datasheet, adjust the view of it. To me, those are pretty trivial things. To me, the most important thing is having the correct data in there. And remember, to have the correct data, you must have the relationships established and the enforcing referential integrity. How do I enforce referential integrity? Database tools, relationships. We show tables. If we're missing a table that we have, we can right-click Show a Table. If it's not in here, let's see, do we have all our tables? Appointments, owners, patients, product. And I don't have the product table in my relationships. Let's show the product table. I can right-click Show Table, and let's bring in the product table. And do we have a supplier table? No, we don't have a supplier table. Let's show the supplier table. And move it out of the way of the other ones. And let's see, do we have all the other tables in there? Treatment cost. There's the treatment cost. Veterinarians there. Veterinarian vendors. We don't have that one. Let's bring that into our relationships. Now, what are the relationships between those tables? I don't need to add any more tables, so I'll just go ahead and close the Add Tables. Can you see the relationships between these tables? It looks like product type, is that an ID of the product? No, that is a type that we added, the multi-valued. Looks like we don't have a supplier of the product. Let's see, in the veterinary or supplier ID, let's see oh, here we go. We see supplier ID in the product table. That's a hint that that's probably a reference to the supplier table. So let's put them next to each other just because they're logically connected. And the relationship between them is when I'm putting a supplier ID here, it is referring to a supplier ID in the supplier table. So to establish that relationship that Access will make sure is proper when I do queries, I can click one and just drag it to the other, And that's establishing the relationship between supplier ID in one table to supplier ID in the other table. And now, this is the important thing. We don't want them in the product table to refer to a supplier that doesn't exist. So we choose enforce referential integrity on that relationship. If we ever change the name or the ID of a supplier, we would like to make sure it gets changed in all the references to it. So we do the cascade update. And just since we can, in case we ever delete a supplier, we don't want to leave orphaned records in our database. Let's make sure that if we delete a supplier, all records referring to that supplier will also get deleted. That's a little more dangerous because it's scary to delete data from your database, but that's why we have database backups in case something goes wrong. Now we click create, and at this point, it'll check to make sure there are no invalid suppliers being referred to. If there are, it'll say, sorry, I can't create that relationship because, oh, look at that. The data breaks their integrity rules. There must be a supplier that does not exist being referred to in the supplier table. So it will not let me enforce referential integrity. Well, we don't want to panic. We can just uncheck enforce referential integrity for now, but we'll leave the relationship there. So it creates a relationship without that enforced referential integrity, but that's a clue that, hey, I've got some orphan data in my product table. I must be referring to suppliers that don't exist. I can close the relationships, saving the change. I'm showing there's a relationship there, but let's go check to see in our product table what's the problem. So I click yes, saving the relationships, saving the changes. Now let's close our vendors table. We don't need to see that. Let's take a look at our product table. Sorry, our supplier. No, it was, I forgot what the relationship was. It was the product table referring to supplier 1. Oh, and a supplier 0. Is there a supplier 0? Let's take a look. We only have a supplier named 1. So that is the problem. We're referring to a supplier 0 in our product table, which doesn't exist. So let's fix that by changing that supplier to be Joe's Veggies. And now save that, or just close that, because saving whenever you change the data, it's immediately saved in the database table. I had adjusted the column. That's what he's asking about. Now let's go back to the database tools relationships. I can double click on that line, and now enforce referential integrity should work. And because I want to cascade updates and deletes, I'll check that. Now it should be happy. And now I can go back to the supplier table or the product table, and let me try to refer to a non-existent supplier. If I click off of that, it won't let me go because there isn't a supplier by supplier 2. See how this is preserving the proper relationships? It won't let me refer to a supplier that doesn't exist. So I can do Control Z and it will put it back to an existing supplier. This is very important in databases to not have the data relationships broken. And remember how I did that? Database tools, relationships. If there's not a relationship, drag it from one to the other, to knowing that's the relationships I want to enforce. Double click on the line. I can turn on enforce referential integrity. This is down in the workings of the database. You do not want to violate those rules and then have bad data. Now over here in the vendors table, we do reference a product type, but that's not the ID of a product. So there's not a relationship between product type and product ID. It looks like the veterinary vendors, would they be referred to by anyone? I don't see the veterinary vendor ID being referred to from any table. So it looks like the veterinary vendors table has no relationship between the other tables. It's kind of a table sitting by itself. No one is referring to a vendor by their ID, as far as I can tell. You'd think that maybe product might refer to the vendor. Let's see if supplier. Let's check all the fields of the supplier. No, the supplier isn't referring to any vendor. But it can still be in the relationships table. Anyone coming to view, they would see, well, veterinary vendors, there is no established relationship between the other tables. And maybe that's reason to think, maybe we have a problem in our design. Maybe the product should reference the vendor of that product. And that would be something that the designers would sit down and decide, do we need to reference who our veterinary vendor is for a product? Or when we're talking about a supplier, do they have a relationship with the vendors? That's up to the database people, and they review their business rules in the in this database. And we'll leave up to the high-paid database engineers to worry about this relationship. We're just kind of seeing the kind of things that go on in database design. And we'll basically in our tables, we won't notice how complicated this has gotten just with adding a few tables. Usually usually tables are related in some way to the other tables. It's not common to find a table sitting by itself without a relationship between the others. But in this case, it appears that it's a separate table, not referring to another table by its ID, and no other tables are referring to it. And so then whenever I adjust the layout or the design, I can just close this and save those changes. So this is kind of a way of documenting how your database works, as well as reinforcing those relationships. So it's helpful for documentation in the design and understanding the relationship. And in the database design, it's called an entity relationship diagram. But it also helps us make sure the database works properly. And let's see if they have us doing anything else with our database. Referential integrity is one of those things, it's one of the more complex things in databases, but it's a very important idea that if there's a relationship between two tables, you don't want that being messed up and lose campers and lose patients because they had the wrong owner referred to that did not exist. And that's it for Access Project 3. Remember, in Access, anytime you want to just see what's in your tables, you can always just double click on any table. You view all the data just like, well, very similar to a spreadsheet. You can design, change the type of data being stored in every column, and you can adjust the field size of things depending on what type of data there is. You can always come back and adjust your type of data expected to be stored in each column. And this is usually done at the start, because once you have data in there and then come back and start adjusting the type of data or the field size, it'll say, wait a minute, you may be losing data that's already there because you're shortening text. Maybe you had a long text. It'll actually cut it off if you try to shorten the field size shorter than what's actually in there. So usually you do all your design up front, and then you start filling it up with the data. And that's something that the database designers do as they're creating databases. Your job will be using databases, understanding that queries can pull specific data out of your database, and forms allow us to enter data in a user-friendly way. Reports allow us to generate nice printable documents for reporting to the government or others that need to see useful information. Spam your users. You can even have it go through your database of people and send emails. They make it a little harder because they don't want to make it easy to spam. And that's it for Access 3. Go ahead and close Access 3, and it's ready to submit to Schoology. Remember, this is something that happens occasionally. Remember, whenever you create or open a database, I'm going to bring my file browser up here for a second. Whenever you open a database, it creates a extra little lock file that just is sitting there to confuse you. Let me bring that up here. I'm getting ready to open up Smart AC3 maintenance. And over in my file browser, I'll put it up here. In my file browser, there is Smart AC3 maintenance, ACCDB file, okay? Once I open the file, back in my browser, another file shows up. If I refresh, with a little L in front of it. Whenever you have the database open, a lock, that's called a lock file. It's for record locking, but it's also there to confuse us. That is not the Access database. It's a temporary file that has, if you notice the size of it, if I grab this and show the size, the actual size of it is 0. Why can't I adjust that column? It won't let me move that column. Maybe I have to shrink one of these columns. The actual size of the file has nothing in it. It's a way for Access to keep you from opening the same Access file twice. But it's something that they should have had hidden because it's sitting there looking sort of like an Access database, but it is not the database. But once I close it, that file goes away. Once I close Access, that lock file goes away. So it's always safest to close Access before submitting your homework so you don't accidentally send me that lock file. It's happened to more than one person, so that one person shouldn't feel embarrassed. It's blame Microsoft. Whenever you do things that are embarrassing, it's like, Microsoft should not have designed it for me to accidentally use that. All right, ready to go on to the Bible database. Here we go. I'm going to go to the Schoology assignment to read what I'm supposed to do in the Bible database. I'll log in as my friend Jay Smart. Go down to this course. He's enrolled in so many courses. He's taken about 50 credits. And down here in the assignments, down to the Access Bible database, Access Bible Project. We're going to be doing some fairly easy queries, but just like we did in Excel, importing data is very useful. I have gotten the Authorized Standard Version of the Bible here. I give you the link where I found it. You don't have to go there and find it and download it because you have the download available right here, the ASV Bible. And I think we're doing everything with the ASV Bible. Oh yeah, we do want to import both of them. So we're going to figure out how to import data from the internet into a database. So let's download each of those just by clicking on that. And then I'm going to download it to a place where I'm ready to store it. asvbible.csv. It's a CSV file, and let's check to see what's in it before we try to open it with our database. And we're going to download the Net Bible as well, netbible.csv. And now that they're downloaded, I can go to where I downloaded it by hovering over it, going to the folder that it's in. And there I see the two CSV files. I do see, when I click on that, I do get a preview over here that it has some extra copyright stuff at the top of that file. I need to clear that out before trying to do the import. So just like anytime you're importing data, you have to adjust the data a little bit to make it sure it conforms to a nice, easily importable text file. So I'm going to right click on that file and I'm going to open with Notepad. Right click, open with Notepad. We're going to edit that file just a little bit in order to make it easily imported into Access. Up pops Notepad, and all I need to do is delete the lines right above where it says verse ID, book name. We want all those extra lines at the top to be deleted. We do want to leave the verse ID, book name in there because that's going to become the column titles when we do the import. CSV is a very convenient way of sharing information that can then easily be brought into a spreadsheet or into a database. There's commas between. That's what the C stands for, a character separated data, character separated values in my file. And Notepad is happy to open the entire Bible, all 31,102 lines of text. And notice it is assigning a verse ID to every verse in the Bible. We have a name of the book, number, chapter, and verse text. Let's now import that into our database. Let's go ahead and save that. We'll also edit the let's also edit the Net Bible, since we're going to be importing that too. Let's right click on that, open with Notepad. Remember, this is a text editor. I can open just about anything with a text editor, and just delete those top few lines and save it, Control S, and then you can close Notepad. Now they're ready for import. And let's go then and start a new Access project. That's what the instructions said. Let's go ahead and check our instructions. Import this data. We're going to be importing into a new table named ASV. So here we go. Start Access, creating a new database. A blank database. Going to give it the name Bible, or last name Bible. Do Smart Bible. Put your last name there. Last name Bible. And make sure to save it in a location where you're happy to have it saved. I'm keeping it on a separate drive over here. If you put it in your documents folder, that's just fine. Smart Bible is the name of mine. And now click Create. And I don't need this first table. I'm just going to close it. We're going to go right to External Data and New Data Source from a file, and it's a text file. We're bringing it in from a text file. New Data Source from file, text file. And now I browse over to where that CSV file is. Browse over to it. ASV Bible. We're going to be bringing the data into a new table. It is delimited, and it looks, well, let's find out. Go to the next page. It's giving us a preview of what it sees there. I do see that first row does contain my field name, so I'm going to check. It does contain field names. I see the text is being divided properly without a problem, so I'm happy with the comma as my separator. If you see a different thing selected, see tab. See how the lines don't show up? It's not separating the columns with the tab. Semicolon doesn't work. Comma does work. So the comma is my separator. Text qualifier, quote, we'll leave that. And I click Next. And now I can choose what data type each column will get as I import it. And it's taking a good guess. That's text. That's a number. That's a number. That's a number. This, it's saying short text, but I know that there are long verses in the Bible that short text is too short for. There are verses, there's just a couple verses that are too long for short text, so we do need to tell it the data type for the text. Even though you think short text would be good, let's choose long text. That's the only thing we need to change. Otherwise, it has guessed properly the right data type for each column. And remember, I can keep going back and checking things, and until I click Finish, I have a chance to change my options. So I selected that column. Everything else, I'm happy with the choice it has made, guessing what type of data that is. This one, since verse ID looks like it's a good primary key, I'm going to choose my own primary key rather than having another number attached to my text verse ID looks like it's unique for every verse, so I'm going to choose verse ID to be my primary key. It will let you have no primary key, but things don't work out the best without a primary key. So we'll let verse ID be the primary key. Next, the name of my table goes with the same name as the text file, and I'm good with ASV Bible as my table name. So now I click Finish. And I don't need any analysis after importing the data. Just for fun though, let's see what happens if I do see what the wizard says. It might tell me how many records it brought in. Let's click Finish. Ready to analyze. Let's see what it tells me. Wizard thinks it should group into two tables. I'm going to not have it do anything. I see that it's thinking it may want to separate my table into two pieces, but I'm not going to have it do that. Let's go ahead and go cancel, and I don't need to save the import steps because I'm only doing this once. Now let's go get the other data source, external data, new data source from file, text file. Do the same thing with our King James version. Again, new table, browse to that, ASV, or sorry, the Net Bible, sorry, not the Net Bible. Do the same thing with the Net Bible, open that, click OK, walk through the same steps. First row does contain field names. It remembers my last choice of separator. Next, everything can be the same except that text. Make sure that that gets changed to long text, or it will cut off some verses. And if there were fields in here that I didn't care to use, I could choose a column and say, oh, I don't need to bring that in. And I click Next. And just like before, there is a primary key, verse ID already there. I don't need to add another one. And click Next. Net Bible's a good name, and I don't need to use the wizard anymore. Finish. Don't need to save the import steps. Now I have two tables. Just for fun, let's take a look at how it imported them. There I see I have all the data imported. I can adjust my row height to see the full text of the verse as I just browse through the entire Bible all the way to verse number 31,102. Let's see, do they both have the same number of verses? Let's take a look. Net Bible. Oops, adjust the row height and the column of the text. Let's see if it has the same number. Oh, it has a few more. 31,087. So, actually a few less verses. Oh, and I see there's some strange characters in there. Not sure what that's about. So it looks like the .NET Bible removed a few verses that they perhaps weren't in what they thought was the more reliable texts. Okay, so now we have two books, or two versions imported into our database. Now let's see what else we want to do. Back to the assignment. It did say here that I can skip the book name column. We'll see that we can always delete a column from a table if we after we do this part. We're going to create a table matching book names with book number. We're going to do a make table query, and then we don't need the book name. We're going to be referring to the book by its ID. Because if we look in our tables, do you see redundant data? This column here, we're naming the column over and over again. Suppose we ever realize that we're going to put the book name, there's a spelling error or something. We would have to change it in 31,000 places. Of course, we could do that quickly with a query. But we're going to put the book name as in a special table, and we're just going to refer to the book by its number, and we'll get its name from its book name table. How do we do that? Well, we're going to create a book name table by creating a query and turn it into a make table query. So let's do that make table query. Watch how this is done. I'm going to close my ASV Bible, saving my changes to the column, yes. And now let's create a query, create query design, that takes the ASV Bible, gets its book number and book name. So no, I don't need to know both the name and the number. In the book name table, I'm going to know what the name of the book is based on its number. So I'm going to create a table that's simply relating book number to its book name. Let's run the query just to see what I get. And I get it listing the same book name multiple times. And I don't need it listed multiple times. Let's go back to our design. Click out here in the gray, and in the properties of our query here, we want our unique values to be yes. Turn unique values yes. The properties of the query, I'm clear, click in the gray, property sheet of the query, unique values yes. Now let's run the query. I can close these extra dialogues. Now I get just one number with each book all the way up to book 66. And I don't need my rows to be so tall, so I'm going to adjust my row height. This is what I want to be in my book name table, relating a book number to its actual name. No longer to have redundant data, the book name listed with every verse. I only refer to a book by its book number. To make the table, I go back to my query design, and I turn it into a make table query by clicking make table. And the table I'm going to make is going to be book names. That's going to be the name of the make table query. And now to actually create that table, this is when I do the run. Just like we did mass changes and update, I'm making a table called book name when I run it. And it should give me a warning. You are about to paste 66 rows into a new table. Yes, I do want that to happen. I click yes. And look at there, a book name table appeared. And I see it got created with the book number and book name in it. And let's go to the design of that table. And let's make sure that the book number becomes the primary key. We want book number to be the primary key in my book name table. And that table now is a good table that I can now establish the relationships between the book name and these both Bible text tables. But before I do that, now that I have book name and the proper association, I'm going to close that, saving the change. I made that the primary key. This query, I'm going to go ahead and save it just to show that I know how to make one. I'm going to save it as book name table builder. Because it is a make query, a make table query, it will show up as an exclamation point, an action query. And I don't need to run it any other times because it's one time is enough to run and make the book name table. Now that I have the book name table created, I can always open it and see what's in it. And now that I know I have the book name table, I can go to my ASV Bible table, and I don't need this column anymore because I'm going to be referring to the book by its book number. I can delete this column by right-clicking Delete Field on the book name field. Saving space in my database, no longer referring to redundant data, having the book name spelled out every time. The book name is going to be referred to by in the book name table. Saving space in my database. Let's do the same thing to the Net Bible. Right-click Design View. Or sorry, not Design View. Actually, I could delete it in Design View. I could come here and delete that here as well. Right-click Delete Row. And that's the same as though I deleted the column in column view. Now that we have that, remember now we want to now tell Access that's how the tables are related. So let's go to our database tools. Yep. All right, let me take a look. What's going on there? What's it saying? Yeah, go ahead, undo the change to the verse ID there. It looks like you accidentally edited the verse ID. Now click on the right click on the book name up above and and you did, yeah, we want to delete that column. Right click on the gray. Well, hit enter or tab. All right, close the table. Don't save any changes. You want to say yes, you want to close it. Okay, now don't run the query. Go open the ASV Bible table again. Now don't click anywhere, don't type anything. Right click on book number and delete that column. Yep. And do the same thing. Now close the table and do the same thing in your Net Bible. Delete the book name column. Yep. Now we're going to go to the relationships. And we're going to establish the relationships between those two Bible versions and the book name table. Relationships. We want to double click on each of these. And what's the relationship? When I'm referring to a book number, it is related to the book number in the book name table. I'm enforcing referential integrity. And if ever I decide to change the ID of a book, I'm going to cascade any updates. And we're not going to delete any books. So we're going to not say cascade delete. Now we have that relationship. Same relationship between book number here and book number in book name. Again, enforcing reference integrity, cascade updates. That's telling Access, make sure that there's that relationship there and there's referential integrity. And I can close my relationships table. Saving all my changes. And now I can get down to business of creating queries on my Bible. Yes, James.
I don't have book numbers in ASV because until they delete it.
No, you deleted book name in ASV, not book number. Let me take a look. So you deleted two columns? I saw you delete just the book name column. Did you go back and delete another column?
No.
Let's see here. All right, show me what you did again.
I just have verse ID, chapter, verse, text. And then that file
Yeah, you weren't supposed to delete the book number column. Just go back and redo the import.
Okay.
Mr. Man, when I try and import a Bible, it gives me 10 different fields.
Let me check. Did you edit that file and remove the extra lines? Let me see what you got there.
Heavy extra. It like splits up the text.
Go back, yeah, go back to the top. You don't have any extra lines up there. Okay, go back to the import. Yeah, the import, you didn't do the import right. Go ahead and delete that. You can close that table and delete it. Well, close the relationships first. You got to close relationships. Yep, save any changes. Okay, now you can close that table. Yep. Now go back to external data from file. Yep, very good. Go to your Net Bible. Import. Next. Comma. It looks like it's, oh, look at that. It's already showing that it's not separating it correctly. I can see right away. Oh, text qualifier. Your text qualifier, change that to double quote. There we go. Somehow that got changed. And actually, since we're doing the import, yeah, change that to long text. And before doing next, go back to the book name column and click on the book name column and click do not import, since we already have our book name table established. And don't go next yet. We want it. There you go. You're going to use that, and you're good. There you go. Now you don't have to worry about the step about removing the book name because you already had it. There you're good. So now your text didn't get separated. That was that extra text qualifier thing. The quote around the text, it got confused about commas because it said, hey, that's my separator. But the comma's inside of quotes, so we ignore commas inside of quotes. There you go. And now bring in your add your table, the book name table, or sorry, the Net Bible table. There you go. And now establish the relationships. Now the easy part we'll work on Monday. The easy part is building those queries. You are welcome and encouraged to actually build these queries and see if you can figure out these queries for this. We'll be building those as we practice on Monday. Queries that find and show these specific extractions from your version of the Bible. We will do this on Monday, as well as review for the final on Monday. Check Schoology for the actual date and time of the final. I am flexible if you want to come during the other section, as long as someone's not sitting in your, well, you won't need to, it won't matter where you're sitting. You are welcome to attend one of the other sessions if it's more convenient for you. All right, have a wonderful day. I did record this for our basketball players.